Let's review Pesachim Daf Ayin Gimel, the last Daf in the parak. The Gemara starts off by telling us that our Mishnah listed off several cases of a shechita that would be possible for the Karban Pesach, such as when they were no oichlin or they were al tameh, and cases where it was a kosher Karban Pesach. And the Mishnah says that the kosher Karban Pesachs are potter from achatos, but the possible Karban Pesachs, for the most part, are chayiv in a Karban Chatas. But there's no chiddush in those, because we have earlier Mishnayos that already tell us which karbanos are kosher, which aren't, and we would automatically figure out that the ksherim, of course, you're not chayiv a Karban Chatas for, and the psulim you are. So the Gemara says the whole chiddush of our Mishnah was just for the case of someone on Erev Pesach who shechted a shlomim l'shem Pesach b'ru'uyin. It was an animal that could have been used for the Karban Pesach. And there, Rabbi Yeshua holds that ta b'dvar mitzvah v'asa mitzvah ksas, v'asa mitzvah koldu, would be potter from achatos. Rabbi Eliezer holds over there, it would be chayv achatos. It's that machloikis that's the main focus of our Mishnah. And all the other cases were just brought down agav arche. The Gemara then quotes a kasha that Rav Huna bar Chimna asked his son to ask from Reb Zreika. And that is, the Mandamer holds Mekalkel b'chabura. When you're making a chabura, when you're damaging an animal, making it bleed, when that's done al yidei kilkel, it's not accomplishing anything good, there's no chiyuv for Shabbos in that case. So in our case, where all these shchitas were possible, why is there a chiyuv chatos? The Gemara says that even if the carbon is on the madrega of him alula yerdu, meaning even though it's possible, but you might still be able to leave it on the mizbeach, the emurim on the mizbeach if they were placed there by mistake, or even if the shechita did not even take away the shem nevela and it's tameh, nevertheless the shechita at least took away the problem of Eivrim and Achai and was matir the meat to be eaten to Ben Noach. That's enough of a tikkun to make it a shechita that would be mechayiv you on Shabbos for making that shechita. The Gemara then brings a halacha that Rav said. If there's a carbon oshum that became disqualified and your makrivit stam, it becomes a carbon oila. And it happens automatically without someone specifically making that change. So let's see how that impacts our sugya. If you have a carbon pesach that you shechted, and you found out afterwards that all of the oichlin retracted, or all of the oichlin were tummy, so that is a possible carbon pesach. So by definition, it should automatically transfer to be a shlomim. Problem is the Brisa explaining our Mishnah says, in that same case, where someone shechted it, not realizing that there were no oichlin, that on a weekday, that carbon is, of course, puzzle, and you'd have to burn it right away. This is a problem, because the halacha is that a carbon that has a psul haguf, an internal psul, that is allowed to be burnt right away. But a carbon that has an external psul, only a technicality, that you're not allowed to burn right away. It's a bezayin kachim. You have to wait until it becomes noisar, and only then are you allowed to burn it. So let's look over here. He shechted his Pesach, but we say it automatically becomes a shlomim because there were no eichlin. If that's the case, why in the world is this carbon puzzle? It must be, it's puzzle because when did you shecht it? You shechted it after the carbon tamid shal bein harbayim, because that's when all the other carbon pesachs are shechted. But that's not an internal psul. That's not a psul aguf. That's a technicality. If that's the case, you would have to be uber tzuras, and you'd have to leave this meat till it becomes nicer, and only then are you allowed to burn it. Yet, the Brisa says about our Mishnah that you burn it right away. The Gemara tried to change what Rav said and claim that he said the opposite, that you actually have to have specific havana to change it. That way, in our case, the Pesach remains a Pesach, and if you shechted a Pesach shaloi lo eichlov, it is a psul aguf. But the Gemara says we can't say that that's what Rav said, because we have a Reb Chia bar Gamda who taught us on Daf Samach Dalid that the only time you say that you have to specifically be oiker the carbon from being a Pesach to a Shlomim is if it was Bailim who had a carbon Pesach before Pesach Rishon and they became Tameh. They by default are going to want to retain that carbon as a carbon Pesach to use on Pesach Sheni. However, a normal Korban Pesach that was disqualified will automatically become a Shlomim. So that takes us back to our kasha. If it automatically becomes a Shlomim, the only psul that we have here is that it was shechted at the wrong time, which is not a psul aguf. So why does the Brisa say that it must be burnt right away? The Gemara answers that this Korban Pesach that automatically became a Shlomim, the Shoichid had in mind bedavka that it should be a Pesach. So yes, it became a Shlomim, but he had bedavka in mind that it should be a Pesach. And it's following the sheet of the Tana Rabbi Yosef ben Chanoi, who holds that if you take a Shlomim and you have bedavka kavana when you shecht it should be a Pesach, that is a psul aguf. And that will explain why our Mishnah says Yisarif. The Gemara had a havamina to say that there's a shita of Rabbi Shmuel ben Bebroika who argues on the Brisa and would in fact say that it would be Tuber Tzarason. The Gemara ends up saying that that's not pshat in Rabbi Shmuel ben Yochanan ben Bebroika. Rabbi Shmuel ben Bebroika holds that you never ever burn karbanos right away. Every carbon, no matter what psul it has, it must become noiser first, because we learn a gzer shava oven from pigel. Just like noisar has to be noisar in order to burn it, so to pigel or any other psul aguf would have to be noisar before you would be allowed to burn it. Hadron aloch elu dvar.